Are you ready to paint flowering thistle plants? This demonstration will be suitable for absolute beginners, so not to worry if you're new to watercolors. Let's first take a quick look at some of the variations. They come in different shapes, a wide range of colors, and even the needles can vary from more wispy to thick, hard spikes. Keep this in mind as we work on today's project. Check out the stems and leaves. Some of them are small and more leaf-like, while others are made up of mainly needles. So what does this tell us? Well, I'd say it tells us that anything goes. There's so much room for experimentation depending on what look appeals most to you. First, we're going to run through 3 quick demos. Chances are you probably already own one of these brushes. This first one is a pointed round brush, size 4/0, but anything with a fine tip will work. Next is an angled brush, size 10/0. An angled wisp brush. And this is actually a really cool brush, and I'll link a video if you want to see more about it. And finally, we have a fan brush. I don't actually know what size it is, but it's about 1 inch across. So we're going to start out with the pointed round, which will give us the most control. We're painting wet on dry paper, by the way. And most of the time I like to begin at the base of the flower, just underneath where the flower will sit. And I'm adding some leaves and spikes. And then what I like to do is just come in with a slightly darker color. And I'm just going to drop it in, just into a select few areas, not all over the entire thing. And if the previous paint is still wet enough, the color will flow on its own. Mine was a little bit too dry, so I just had to help it along. And onto the flower, you can see that I'm aiming for a somewhat triangular shape, so smaller up top and wider as I move down. And up next, we have the angular wisp brush. I'm mainly working with just one side of my brush, the side with the longest tip, and I'm flicking my wrist and having those leaves and points move outwards. And you can see how even the slightest rotation of this brush changes the outcome of the brush strokes. And that's where it gets really interesting, playing with different movements. And now let's move on to the flower. The same flicking motion. And you'll notice that I don't really like to cover in the entire section. I like to leave white spaces in between the marks because it creates the illusion of texture and movement, and we can really see the individual points. And I've dropped in just a touch of yellow ochre. I found that a very small amount of yellow can create a sun-kissed look once it dries. And now let's move on to the fan brush. This is the brush to use if you like surprises and just completely turning over control of your painting, leaving things in the hand of your crazy brush, with all of its fingers sticking up in every direction, each one trying to reach out and grab the paper. I mean, sure, you can work with it turned so that just a single side is touching the paper, but let's be honest, all of those bristles are fighting to get in the mix. And I personally love those unexpected marks and lines. And I'll throw in a touch of yellow on this one too. And actually, I think I am going to try one more flower. I'm still using the fan brush, but for this one, I really want to try to focus more on the wrist flick. You can see how cool those lines are when you really get the hang of the flick. And I'll add a little bit of darker green as well. And for the flower, I'm really working to just flick this out in all directions. Things are getting a little bit crazy here, but that's okay. It's actually a lot of fun. And let's throw in a darker value at the base of the flower. You know, this last one, it reminds me of something. I just can't quite put my finger on it. Okay, so now that you have a basic grasp of the different methods, let's get some more practice in by painting a small field of thistles. I'll be using undersea green for my stems, stalks, and leaves, and my darker drop-in color will be perline green. For the flowers, I'll stick with permanent rose, just like I used in the examples. I do have my yellow ochre handy just in case I want it. And this project, I think, is so much fun, regardless of whether you like to paint loose and free or precise and detailed. You can either take your time and think about the marks you place on the paper, or move quickly and try not to think and just let the brush run wild, and you can just hang on tight and see where it takes you. That's what I'm going for right now. And I want some of my stems to be facing different directions, coming in from different angles, so they don't all look alike. Let's add some grass below with watered down undersea green. I'm just bumping my brush up and down across the page, trying to create interest, and I also think this will help anchor the thistles so they aren't just floating in space. And just keep flicking your wrist outwards. Flicking and moving and just trying new things and seeing what you like. I really love the loose, airy quality of these flowers. But of course, you could take your time and build up multiple layers, focusing on a more realistic look. You might lose some of the airiness, but adding details can be fun as well, depending on what you're going for. This third plant is really just covered in spiky needles. I would not be picking these up with bare hands, that's for sure. And I'm going to use my brush now to splatter some pink first and then some green. The fan brush is actually really nice for the little splattering technique. Sometimes I wind up with way too much paint, but with the fan brush that doesn't seem to be an issue. Oh, and I'm just realizing now that I forgot to add the yellow ochre, so I'm going to drop in a little bit of that. And it seems to be working really well with the second and third flowers because they're still wet, so they're just kind of soaking that yellow in nicely. And I can already tell that it's going to give them a really beautiful soft glow when it dries. But I think the first one might have been a little bit too dry at that point. All right, I'm getting close to finishing up here. So let's add in some more perline green to darken it at the roots and a few more flicks of grass. All right, isn't that so wonderful? Those little flicks. They create the perfect little blades. And when they cooperate, they just seem to taper off so nicely at the ends, and I love that. And I do want to get some darker values on these flowers as well as on the stems, because it does fade quite a bit as it dries. All right, some more permanent rows, just in a few areas like before. We don't want to cover up the entire flower. And I'm happy with that. I'm going to go ahead and stop right there. So we have a trio of flowering thistles. And I do want to show you a few other examples that I was working on earlier. So these ones here show a really good variety as far as color and shape variations. And if you want to, go ahead and revisit those photos from the beginning and maybe see how many different types of thistles you can recreate. Last year, I posted a series of simple flower tutorials for beginners that I think you'll enjoy. And you can find the first one right here. Thank you so much for watching.